point out the car to my dad. I'm like, Dad, look, Ferrari, Porsche. What does he do as a job? He's an accountant.
And I think deep down in all of us, there is a child who wants to make mom and dad happy.
Yeah, of course.
And it's deeper than what am I good at? What should I do for a living? It's like, why do I live? Allah created everybody differently. There's a moment where you identify that you have some specific gift Allah gave you. And then the next question, how can I use this for Allah's sake?
Welcome back. Assalamu alaikum to the Roots podcast. You can notice that we've got a very similar setup here because we just finished recording the first one and we're on to the second one. But we have an extra human. So again, we're your hosts, Hamza bin Majid. I'm a fourth year medical student at the University of Manchester. And we have Ustad Hisham.
Hisham Abu Yusuf, one of the directors at Roots Academy and instructors, and good friend to the boys here.
And who is this friend?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mujtaba. Inshallah, soon to be a final year student in accounting, studying at the University of Manchester. So yeah.
How sad, accounting.
That's what I said.
Let him off. He's on the list, you know, like medicine, engineering, accountancy, law. He's on the list, so.
That is a touchy topic.
Sorry.
That is a touchy topic for
Too
Mujtaba.
early.
We'll discuss that in
We'll get to it.
We'll get to that. But Mujtaba, what are we here to talk about?
So I think today is majority of the topic will be around kind of choosing your degree, kind of the path which we take as students. Myself, I've taken obviously maybe a different path compared to some other students where I've done a obviously normal degree, but also with the placement year. We're going to be exploring kind of my experiences there, and then also I think moving on to some advice from Ustad Sham about fulfillment and purpose, and maybe how we can link career and maybe our university goals with our purpose, and how we can make that as fulfilling as possible, inshallah.
And without bigging yourself up too much, why do you think you've decided to talk about this particular topic with us? What do you think about your experiences makes you a good person to talk about this with?
Yeah. So I think in terms of a university degree, obviously you got your standard 3 years of study, but because I've done that placement year, I think it just adds that extra element of maybe being within the workplace, understanding certain aspects which may not be taught at uni and also explored at uni. I think that's
Awesome.
And my mindset was with the first podcast, we're going to talk about logistics and this and that and what to do here and what to do there, but it turned into a lot of this is the core of everything, and I think that's what this episode's going to turn into very quickly as well. Yeah. So Mujtaba, you've discussed kind of you're doing an accounting degree. You had a year in industry, so you've kind of had the experience with working, and then you also said we're going to be discussing kind of purpose, identity, career, what it all means. And you know what, shall we just go straight into that?
Let's do it.
I think the thing to ask is what's the story? How did we get here? How did you get into accountancy, and where did that come from? I think people have various. We're going to flip the question around shortly. So.
I think I start with it's a bit of a funny story actually. So I'm from a small town. It's a city actually. It's a city. It's not a small town. I think being in Manchester, it makes you feel.
Hold on, Peterborough is a city.
Peterborough is a city. Yes.
Just about.
It just when you're in Manchester, you're made to feel like, oh, Peterborough is this village, which it isn't.
We'll fact check it later.
So, and there's a story I can remember from when I was younger, and I'll be in my car with my dad, and I'll see maybe a nice car drive by. It might be a Porsche, might be a nice BMW, and from a young age, I've been into my cars, enjoy that kind of automotive world, let's just say. And a lot of the time I used to ask, Peterborough is a small place, so people know each other. So I would I point out the car to my dad. I'm like, Dad, look, Ferrari, Porsche. And he my dad would be like, okay, I actually know this person, this. And what does he do as a job? And guess what? He's an accountant. So from a young age, there was that kind of, wow, okay, if I'm an accountant, that's maybe how I can get to that level. Yeah. Basically, maybe I can in the future have a Porsche, have a nice car, and maybe that's the route. Obviously when you're younger, you're like, that's what you're looking at. So I explored that route. Majority of the time within like my studies, I'd say there was always like an inclination towards that business, finance, economic side. And also that's like the subjects I studied at A level. I studied business, economics, and just like psychology, which
Just so you can manipulate people into giving you more money.
I was wondering where the link was.
you got to learn how the mind works and
Yeah,
how
of
we
course.
can make the most money.
Mm.
But yeah, so if you look at those combinations of, I guess, subjects, economics and business, they're quite similar in in the sense like they work hand in hand. Obviously, economics, you're looking at like more the business environment, and within business studies, you're looking at more the operations of the business. So I thought, okay, like you come to that kind of like point in school where they're like, okay, you need to start thinking about careers. You need to start thinking about what courses you're going to be studying at uni. And I think the first thing that everyone starts, you go into Google, you put in your 3 A levels. I think it's on like which.com. I think it's which course shall I study or something like that. You put in your 3 courses and it'll give you like a list of like 99% match. Like it'll give you your matches for your degree. Obviously, accounting was towards the top. So like, okay. And I was like, okay, let's explore this. This like makes sense. I know accounting is a like stable profession. People make good money from it. Now let me see if I'm a match for that. What's it called? Profession. So then it kind of like a few work experiences throughout sixth form. And it kind of that was a trajectory. I'd say that led me to accounting, on a whole.
You mentioned the Porsches and the Ferraris and them being accountants. Is that the same mindset that you took into when you actually then firmly picked accountancy? Was it still there?
Because that was from a younger age, and when I say younger, probably maybe like around 10, maybe like that young. I think the mindset shifted probably around sixth form, when you get to that point where you actually need to like consider, is this career for me? Is this option for me? And I think a lot of the time maybe people go into a university like choose a degree like based on like a bunch of different pressures, maybe different other reasons. They might have just researched on like online and said, okay, yeah. So I could have like seen that match and been like, okay, I'm not going to do any more research. I'm not going to do any experience. That's the course for me. Or it could be maybe like family pressure. Like, I don't know. There could be from a younger age, yeah, you need to be an accountant, which I don't think wasn't the case, but that can be. And I think like with certain people, a lot of the time, there's no actual room for kind of thinking about maybe other degrees, because from like such a young age, just like you push, you're going to be a medic. Had to mention the medics. Maybe a lawyer, an engineer. So yeah, I think the mindset shifted around sixth form when I need to actually like, okay, is this feasible for me? Like, yeah, the money is there, and the money is also in a bunch of different careers. The money is like within law, engineering. The money's there. The Ferraris can be there. The Porsches can be there. But how does like my current situation and like the environment that I'm in, can I study accounting? Do my like subjects lean towards that way? And I think the main thing, do I fit maybe as an accountant in the future? Yeah.
Money is one thing, and there's things that like you said that also have money. So then you had to consider other things, A, B, C, D, E. What were those things specifically?
So number one, I think like what the role actually entails. So a lot of the time, again, you do your research and you get given a very brief kind of explanation. An accountant prepares financial statements. An accountant prepares budgeting. Basically, things that you need to see how they work. So I think one of the things was, okay, I need to see what the role is and how it works.
Okay.
Another thing is, can I see myself in that role? I think like maybe when I was like in the younger years, you kind of just thinking about, yeah, the money. But as you grow older, you realize like I need to somewhat enjoy this role. I might be working for, I don't know, let's say from like the age of 22 once I graduate to, let's say, current retirement age I think is 63. So there's a significant number of your years that you could be working this role. So you need to like, okay, will I enjoy it? And at that point, let's say like the idea was, yeah, accounting is the route.
Okay. So there's money, enjoyment. Do I fit into this role?
Yeah.
Do I know what this role is?
Yeah.
Those are like the big four.
I think so.
I think that one of the big four that's not been mentioned is permission from Ami and Abu.
Yeah, that's all.
Because the thing is, that filtering already happened. Like there's a number of permissible degree programs you can study, right? And there's a number of impermissible degree programs.
And fine arts is definitely in the second
impermissible,
one.
right? I'm talking about cultural permissibility here, just so no one gets me wrong. So that's filtering's already happened. And I think deep down in all of us, there is a child who wants to make mom and dad happy.
Yeah, of course, 100%.
You know, that's such like, you know, I remember like going to war with my parents over wanting to study physics. They were like, physics? We're gonna teach physics at university? You're gonna become a physicist? Like, Hisham, Nobel Prize winner. Nice try. Okay, like, come on, man, be an engineer. Simple. Do what everybody else is doing. Like,
Which is what happened in the end.
Actually, something even worse happened. I used to say to my father, I'm not going to be that Indian IT guy. And then I went, studied physics, studied engineering, studied Sharia, and I work in IT. So
All the way back to...
My father has a nice laugh. He says, right, you said you want to be... come right round. But I think some of the words that featured when Mushtaba was initially talking about which degree he chose, the idea of stability, this idea of it's a reliable, it's a well-trodden path. People have gone there, they've done well, they've done X, Y, Z. And I guess a deeper question, like at 18, 17, 16, when you make that decision, do you know yourself well enough to make that decision?
If I give a flat,
I
could give a flat no.
Yeah.
But let's like kind of explore that. And maybe at that age, it depends on your experiences. I think how well you know yourself. So within that like process, what's kind of happened in your life that maybe you know yourself, maybe what your personality type is, maybe what you're good at, what you're not good at. I think what you're good at and what you're not good at is kind of, I guess, like you touch on that in school. I would pretty much say, but that's only from like a subject basis. That's not from maybe what's outside of that kind of realm of maths, science, English, history, geography, that kind of 18, did I know myself? Like, if I compare myself from when I was 18 to now, I'm a totally different person. So again, I think the biggest thing is, what experiences have you gone through, and what can you learn from those experiences about yourself?
You just have to take the best guess at the time.
I think so. Yeah, I think what you have to do there is you have to do the best kind of like research that you can do.
Yeah.
So don't just look at that which was it called search of, you got 98% match for accounting. That's it. That's your path.
Let me ask you a difficult question with permission. You've now done a placement year. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, right?
Yeah, you're the host. Control it.
I'm the captain now. Sorry. I'll hand back the reins shortly. Like, you've done your placement year now. How does it match up with what you thought the route to the Porsche that you had in your mind? How does it match up with what you thought finance would be like? Be honest, brutally honest.
Brutally honest.
Yeah. What was it like?
So in terms of like that like route, maybe what I considered from when I was younger, when I picked this kind of career path, there's elements of it which are the same, and that will be you get your degree, you get that grad scheme, you go into that training program where you're going to do 3 years and you're going to get your ACA.
Yeah,
that's remained the same.
No, but your expectation versus reality, what you thought would it be like working in finance, and what was it actually like working in finance?
What you think, I think from when you're younger, what you think of working in finance is they're constantly like, you're speaking to clients. There's a lot of big money involved. It's kind of, it's all like the glamoury stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just say all the glamoury stuff. You're making the decisions for maybe your client. You're providing some advice. what I think you don't see when you're younger is maybe what that profession has outside of just the actual work. So, like, working in a, like, within finance, it's a, let's say, it's an environment that is not, it's not ideal for a Muslim. Let's say.
How? Why?
That's what I felt like when I first like went into work. So going from a bubble of, like, in university with, like, good, like, alhamdulillah, good company, good Muslim brothers who your focus is on, like, salah, your focus is on, maybe there's going to be mention of, or like a reminder about Allah in maybe one of your gatherings. Instantly that's flipped. That bubble's burst. You've gone into an environment where you're sitting on a, like, cluster of desks where people are talking about all sorts, about things that I don't want to mention, but you can imagine. You can imagine what the conversations are like
on a Monday morning after the weekend.
Exactly. Did this on the weekend. It was this. And also, like, just generally the environment, like, having like the company I worked for, at times I felt like it was difficult for me to maybe, like, think about where can I pray, or maybe okay, I need to do my wudu at this time, then I need to go pray at this time. Will this room be available at this time? So it took those extra steps kind of, like, to maybe practice my deen. And I think this isn't considered when you're younger and when you're making those decisions.
You don't think of it as a lifestyle. It's not you don't realize it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
For instance, consultancy is glamorized. I work for the Big Four.
Yeah.
The Big Four, this, McKinsey. I'm 5 days a week in a hotel room. But, like, yeah, how miserable is it to be in a hotel room for 5 days? Trust me. It's, right. And then it's, what is that after work culture that during work? So people, there's a lot that's not considered. You don't realize you're making a lifestyle choice.
When I ask students younger than me in med school, I'm in year 4 now.
Yeah.
So first 2 years you're purely just learning the theory of medicine from textbooks, lectures. You don't really get any placement. In third year, you start placement. Fourth year, you get more intense placement. And fifth year, you have even more intense placement. If I hear any... There are 16-year-olds that not just say that they want to do medicine. They say, I want to be an orthopedic surgeon, or I want to be a neurosurgeon. That just cringes me out, because it's like, how the hell do you know you want to be a neurosurgeon? But even second year med students, when they tell me, oh, I want to be a pediatric urology surgeon, in my head I'm thinking, you have no idea.
Just wait,
because being interested, I think, in a particular field, I don't think is enough to actually be content and enjoy working in that field. You might love the anatomy of, I don't know, you might love rheumatology, for example, but it's about, like you said, a lifestyle. And orthopedic surgery is a horrible lifestyle. It's a death style. And so I think that until you've actually experienced placement, actually experienced working in a field, you can't actually comment on if it's really for you. And even during my placement, at the moment I'm most interested in pediatric medicine. I did a placement on pediatric medicine, but I really enjoyed it as well. I enjoyed it the most. But I still don't know if I'd be a fit for pediatric medicine, because my placement is from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. There was a doctor that I was talking to. She had 4 night shifts in a row and was still working the daytime after those 4 nights.
And I think it's a question of, if you did anything with that intensity, would you still love it? You know, I remember, like, being young and saying to someone much older than me, one of my father's friends, that, I'm interested in X field. And he said, everything is nice until you have quarterly goals and objectives, and you have night shifts, and you have appraisals. Then all the niceness and the funness goes out the window. So it's a sham. This idea that work, be passionate and do what you love, and all this kind of, like, hold hands and sing kumbaya. And there's a deeper question to be actually asked, right? So you're asked, like, oh yeah, what do you want to do? What do you want to work as? So this whole identity of, I'm an X, I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor. So it's like you identify yourself with your work profession. But there's a deeper question, right? So what is your ultimate calling? What if it doesn't fit into a box? What is your ultimate calling? Like, could you go to sleep saying, yeah, being an engineer is my ultimate calling. Like on the day of when I die on my deathbed, I'm going to be so fulfilled about all the circuits I designed, right? Right now, all the mechanical bodies all the legal papers I drafted. I'm gonna be so excited to show that to Allah. Oh Allah, look at this, what I have done. Right? So is that really your calling? And I think what happens is a lot of people go to university, they go to Islamic society, they go to charity week, they go to other things, and they realize actually, there's something deeper here that's activating me that I want to do more of. So if I had a choice, my career would be Quran. If I had a choice, my career would be X or Y or Z. But then they fall into this dilemma of how do I integrate the two? It's like I have two different lives. I have the work life that pays the bill, and I have this stuff that really energizes me. It brings me to life. But how do I? What do I? Where do I?
Because I think when you're figuring out what you want to study at university, you're not thinking about work, you're not thinking about the lifestyle, you're not thinking about the rest of your life. So the top of your list is, do I enjoy it?
Yeah.
But I think the flick is when you start working, the top of your list becomes, what am I most content with? And what fulfills my purpose the most? And it's realizing that what you might have thought is your life path now doesn't seem to fit as much because my priorities have changed.
Yeah. I think the question of purpose is the deepest question that any human being can ever ask themselves. And it's deeper than, what am I good at? What should I do for a living? It's like, why do I live? Allah created everybody differently. And the Prophet ﷺ says, "I'malu fakullun muyassarun lima khuliqa lah." He says, act, do, lift, put up your sleeves and get to work, because everyone will find easy what they were created for. Meaning everybody was created for something specific. So yes, we all worship Allah. Allah created us to worship Him, but everybody's worship is different. Just as the praise of everything in the world is praising Allah. But the praise of the brick wall is different from the praise of the birds. You can hear the birds chirping in the morning, praising their creator, but you can't hear the wall. Everyone's worship of Allah is different, and they're built differently. But for me, it's about going on that journey to unlock, why did Allah create me? So imagine Bilal ibn Rabah, companion of the Prophet ﷺ. And he's an Ethiopian slave. He's a freed slave. Ups and downs. He fights at war, X, Y, Z. Finally, the Prophet ﷺ notices that he has a particular skill. He has the sweetest voice in Medina. So he appoints him, why don't you make the call to prayer? And Bilal is like, me? I used to milk the cows and clean the floor, and I fought in battle, and I've done this and that, and I've been in the heat, and I've been a captive, and I'm going to call to prayer. I'm going to stand on the Kaaba. I'm going to put my feet on the Kaaba. But that was his calling. But it was such a zigzag route to get there. You have Hassan ibn Thabit. He embraces Islam in his 60s. But he becomes the PR machine, the speakerphone, the poet of the Prophet ﷺ. So when people write poetry, insulting Islam, he sits there defending Islam through poetry. It's about, there's a moment where you identify that you have some specific gift Allah gave you. And then the next question, how can I use this for Allah's sake? The Prophet ﷺ notices Zayd ibn Thabit has a special skill in learning languages, polyglot. So he tells him, go learn Hebrew, because I need someone as a messenger between me and the Jews. In 11 days, he learns Hebrew. There's something like that in each one of us, right? Each one of us has a different gift. And the environment of school and college doesn't give you that environment to figure that out. Because in order for you to figure that out, you have to be put in ambiguous environments. No one's going to tell you what to do, how to do it. You just have to figure it out. And how you operate in those moments, it's like you throw, those, they have those series where they throw 20 people on an island, right? The Apprentice, right? You throw 10 people as a challenge. Yeah. What happens? There's ambiguity, right? There's no specific way to solve the problem. So one person emerges as a leader, the other one emerges as good, detail oriented, another one emerges as a good team player, someone emerges as having empathy. Because when thrown into like ambiguity, your natural talents emerge, your natural gifts emerge. But there's not enough ambiguity at school, college. Everything is prepared and perfect. Everything is organized and structured such that there's nothing uncertain. So it's perhaps that's why when you come to university, for instance, you're thrown into uncertain situations. Maybe Islamic society, maybe charity week, maybe some society leadership where it's ambiguous. You don't know what you need to do. So then that's when your natural gifts come out. I'm a great communicator, or I'm good at this. Once you figure that out, like when the Prophet ﷺ would notice this in a companion, the next step was, how can he use this for Allah? So it's like, maybe you're great with numbers. Maybe that's how you get into accountancy. I'm great at maths, right? I love maths. I'm good at numbers. How do I use that? How do I serve Allah through this? Right? And it could be small things like, I'm going to open like a mentorship scheme for Muslims who want to get into accounting. Or it could be that you do the accounts for your local masjid, who are looking for a voluntary accountant, Or it could be that, you have a passion for Quran, you have a passion for accounts, what do I do? Okay, I'm going to open a Quran institute, and I'm going to look after all the operations and the numbers, and I'm going to pay Quran teachers a good wage, something that never happens, right? So it's like, how can I use this for Allah? And it's sometimes hard to look deep in the future and think, where is this going to go? But once you've unlocked, I think the key thing is to unlock that thing. What is that thing?
Yeah.
What is that superpower?
Because you mentioned talking about a life as an engineer, for example. Will you be proud of making those circuits and filling out those legal forms? And I think if you've done it in a way where your intention was to do it for Allah, and it's benefited the world in some way for the sake of Allah, then you can show that to Allah and say, this is what I'm proud of. And there's an example on one of my first placements. I was really struggling to put in a cannula into a patient. It's for IV lines, and I tried 3 or 4 times on my own, and I could not do it. I still can't do it. But there was a year 5, 5th year student, senior to me, who was also on the same placement, and he's done loads and loads of cannulas, and he was very experienced. And he said that, I'll teach you. So we go into a patient, into the kind of a patient's room that needed a cannula, and we've collected everything. We're about to do it, and the second before he's about to put the cannula in the skin, he goes, Bismillah, and he puts the cannula in the name of Allah. And I didn't say anything there because we were with the patient, but when we were walking out, I asked him, do you say Bismillah before everything that you do? And he says, I try and say Bismillah with every little thing that I do with any patient whenever I'm in the hospital. And the reason for that is because if I can't do this for the sake of Allah, the thing that I've been training years and years to do and I'm going to be continuing to train and be a doctor for the rest of my life, I'm going to spend most of my hours of my life doing this thing. And if I can't do that for the sake of Allah, then what's the point of it all?
I think this is where it comes to like integrating, rather than seeing them as two separate things. Is integrating the intention into what you do.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, we're going to spend a lot of our lives doing these things. And somehow we ended up here, or we actively chose this path, but we're here now. Now you're here, and you have 2 options. Either you're a zombie on autopilot, just going about the motions, and you don't see the need, you don't see why you're doing it. Or you imbue what you're doing with that intention. This is benefiting people in some way. And I can see how it's benefiting people, and I'm going to do this for the sake of Allah. I'm going to excel at it. I'm not just going to do it. I'm going to excel at it for the sake of Allah. It's said that the guilds, there used to be guilds, centuries ago, Muslim blacksmiths, Muslim sailors, and that every time the blacksmith would hit his hammer on the metal, he would say La ilaha illallah. They had special adhkar routines while they were at work. And it is that idea of like, how can I connect what I'm doing to Allah? Okay, like I'm a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, I'm in the fine arts, I'm in law. Like, how can I connect my day-to-day with Allah? And Bismillah is a nice way to force yourself to think about that.
Yeah.
Because you're literally saying, I'm asking for Allah's help with this thing. I want Allah's blessing in this thing,
Mm.
and that forces us to connect what we're doing to Allah as opposed to making it something separate. And if all else fails, the intention of I want to earn a halal source of living to feed my family, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
Yeah. I think they're the challenges. So let's for an accountant, it's very. I find it difficult to imagine how you can maybe link. Say I'm going into work, and I'm working for maybe one of the big four companies, and I'm maybe doing audit. Let's say,
Mm.
and I'm auditing maybe some sort of financial statements for any sort of like company that you might just like, let's say like maybe Amazon or just a standard company that doesn't really do specific Islamic things.
Yeah.
How do you maybe integrate that intention into the work you're doing there? Because I think for the medics, I feel like it's easy
It's a
and
lot more direct impact.
yeah,
on
because
people's lives.
you're taking care of someone right there and then.
Mm.
You're maybe preserving life. You're saving someone's life.
Mm.
How can you do that in a field where it's not as direct as medicine? So somewhere like, again,
What's the purpose of
accounting.
the audit? You're auditing X company's accounts.
So
What are you looking for?
so purpose of audit is to ensure that your financial statements are true and there's no misstatements. So
you're
basically,
making sure there's no lie,
no
and
lie.
there's no errors,
Yep.
and there's no missing money.
Yep.
You're preventing lying.
Mm.
You're preventing mistakes that lead to millions of pounds being wasted or lost or gone missing.
Yeah.
Misuse of funds, abuse of funds. If there was anything more directly, but the thing is, it's a lot more inspiring and feel good to sit in front of a patient and look after them. There's a lot more human connection there. When you're staring at a sheet of numbers, you feel disconnected from the impact. And that's the thing is, you feel disconnected from the impact. And that's why it's important to remind yourself, what is that end impact?
Yeah.
That end impact, I want to be of those on the day of judgment in front of Allah. Allah, I was of those people who stopped fraud, who prevented money being misused. You are the one who said, Kulu washrabu wa la tusrifu, eat and drink but don't waste. I prevented people from wasting, misusing, abusing of funds. I was there standing there with my red pen, right? So I am in your service,
Yeah.
Allah. So it's that connection. If you can make that connection, it helps you wake up in the morning with that bit more zeal.
Yeah.
And if you can't make that connection, the more detached you become, the more robotic, the more monotonous the workday becomes. Clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out. The more emptiness you feel inside. What am I even doing? Why am I here? And university students, they have no idea that this is coming. But that can happen to anything in life. You get married, you have a family. Being with your kids is an act of worship. But by the time a parent has first, second, and I'm on 3 now, right?
Inshallah.
By the time a parent has a child, second child, maybe they're 3, 4, parents start to feel like being around their kids is a chore. Where can we chuck the kids? Where can we throw them? Madrasa, let's get them to the Maulana. Let's get rid of them. Because it's dealing with the tantrum and the demanding nature of a child. So, anything can become a chore, literally anything, if it's not imbued with intention. Calling your mum, calling your dad. It's like, I've called my parent. No, mum's call. Sorry, I have to go talk to my... But it's like, that's the person who gave birth to you. That is the greatest person in the sight of Allah after himself and his messengers. But whenever we detach ourselves from our intentions, we end up in the no man's land. And we end up becoming zombies.
Yeah. I mean, Mustafa, you said that medicine's very direct.
Yeah.
But let's say you didn't have that purpose, that intention. Even medicine would become a chore.
Of course.
The example that I gave with the CF5 that said Bismillah before the cannulation, I was on the gastroenterology ward, which is dealing with livers and kind of liver problems, liver failure. What's the number one reason for liver failure? Drinking. So all the patients were alcoholics. Yo, you're John from down the road. How are you, mate? That is all the patients. And imagine you are a consultant on the gastroenterology ward. Hours, day in, day out, for years and years and years. And all you see is 90% of your patients being alcoholics.
Or imagine you're a GP and 90% of your patients have the common cold and you're dispensing paracetamol. Like, every job has its mundane bits.
Everything becomes a sheet of numbers
Yeah.
after so many years.
Look at it for long enough.
Mhm.
And I feel the thing that can connect work to Allah, that can connect your studies, you're sitting in an anatomy lecture, you're sitting in a sociology lecture. Why am I here? How did I get here? What energizes you to connect those things to your values is your salah. You got a 12 to 2 p.m. lecture. At 1 p.m. there's a 10-minute break. You rush off to the stairwell, right? You find your qibla. Maybe you find your compass is not working. You ask your friend, Abdullah, which way? This way. And you say, Allahu Akbar. Right? Allah is the greatest. If He's the greatest, what am I doing for Him? How does this fit into the grand picture, the big picture? Salah is the stepping back. It's the zooming out. And if you're doing salah at work, at university, it allows you to zoom out and say, I am now putting my head on the floor in subservience, in worship, in servitude to Allah. How can I make the rest of my day between my salah a subservience, a worship of Allah? And it's about connecting the dots.
Yeah.
You have these dots, and they look random, they look unconnected. But how can you connect them together? Somebody studying sociology, how can they use their understanding of the human environment, human society, to serve Allah? Somebody who's doing social work, helping children, somebody who's, disconnected, like you said, physicist, looking at atoms, through a microscope. How can they are studying the creation of Allah. All of us, to one extent or another, can convert the intention for our studies. We got there, some of the earliest Muslim scholars used to say, طَلَبْنَا الْعِلْمَ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ. We started seeking knowledge, studying Islam, for other reasons, not for Allah's sake. فَأَبَى إِلَّا أَنْ يَكُونَ لِلَّهِ. But once we got there and started learning, it refused to be done for other than Allah. We were converted. And that's it. It's when you're staring at an anatomy picture of the lungs, you can be bored out of your wits, or you can admire the creation of Allah. You're staring at a financial statement, you can be bored out of your wits, or you can think, how can I use this to eliminate corruption, to eliminate bribery, eliminate money laundering? And it's about that. If you're able to make that jump, that makes the difference between being a mediocre Muslim stuck as a zombie on autopilot and somebody who's so energized and activated. People look at them and they say, wow, this Muslim is on another level.
Yeah. And you mentioned, on a final note before we end things off, you mentioned the importance of salah as a zooming out. I think maybe one of those reasons that it is so good at zooming you out and making you see the bigger picture is because no matter if you're an accountant, a medic, or an IT, you're all following that same structure of salah throughout the day. And one thing that was quite inspiring was we have like a prayer room, not a mosque, but like a prayer room. You can call it a mosque inside the hospital. And during like prayer time, you go in and there's doctors, consultants, nurses, you've got physiotherapists and caretakers, everyone in the hospital praying. And oftentimes it'll be the caretaker leading everyone in namaz. And it makes you realize that we're all on different paths. We're all got different careers. We're all serving Allah in different ways. But at the end of the day, when you come together for salah, you're all serving Allah in the same way.
You're all turned to the same direction. Your compass is pointing in the same direction. You're walking the same path, just taking different routes, but we'll all land there together. Inna lillahi, we come from Allah. Wa inna ilayhi raji'un, and we all in return to Him.
And I think with that, Jazakallah khair, everyone, for tuning in and staying till the end of the podcast. Any final words from our guest, Mujtaba?
Jazakallah khair for having me on the podcast. It was a pleasure, and inshallah there's going to be many more episodes to come.
Peterborough is not a city, man.
Fact check.
Inshallah, we'll fact check later.
Inshallah. With that, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.